Hey everybody, this is Bill Varney from FishTheSurf.com with your Friday, October 10th surf fishing report. Man, we got a big report this week, so let's jump into it right off the bat. A couple of things I want to talk about first is, remember we talked about these dried lugworms are working great in the surf. We're filling lots of orders and a lot of anglers out there using them and even reordering again. So that's a really good sign. I love these baits. Of course, there's a video about them that I've made on my YouTube channel. Check that out. Shows you how to hook them and how to use them at the beach. And certainly go to surffishtackle.com if you'd like to look into them or purchase some there, along with all kinds of surf fishing equipment that you need on the beach to make you a successful surf fishing angler. So the next thing I want to talk about is fishthesurf.com. Of course, we got it back up and running. We stole it back from the hackers, and I opened up on there a section there, how-to articles. You'll find at the top of the page on the menu there, how-to surf fishing articles. There are over 50 published articles on there on every subject. Halibut at the beach, how to find fish at the beach, how to catch bait at the beach, keep bait alive, rigging, beach conditions, you name it. Fishing in Hawaii, it's all there. Check it out. It's free and it's all kinds of information that'll make you a better angler on the beach. So let's first talk about what's going on off the Mexican coast. Man alive. We've had Hurricane Octave, Priscilla, and now we're going to have, it looks like, Hurricane Raymond. It's a tropical storm now, but it's a huge tropical storm. Well, as Octave and Priscilla make their way up the coast toward California, and it looks like Priscilla's going to turn inland, probably around Mag Bay, kind of looks like Cedros Island, between Cedros Island and Mag Bay, in that zone somewhere, and then make its way up to the southwest of the United States there. As it's pushing its way up the coast, it's also going to be pushing swells and warm clear water our way up the coast too. But not unlike the last hurricane, its fetch or its angle to the coast is so close to the coast that it's going to send swells at a very unusual angle. You'll really see that in places like Huntington Beach, where instead of the surf coming straight into the pier, it's going to come in at a very strong left angle there. And what happens when we see that is that we have very strong longshore currents near shore. If it's coming straight in, it doesn't create as much of a current. But the more of an angle it gets at, the swells, the stronger the current becomes. And whenever we have these strong currents like this, it will always reshape the beach. So don't be surprised if you go down at the end of next week and you find that the beach has really changed down there. We have swells that will begin coming in. They started coming in yesterday. They'll build more today. They'll probably peak out tomorrow. But we could have surf on south-facing beaches as much as 3 feet overhead. Some really, really big surf. And then we're going to have a little northwest surf coming in out of a storm from Alaska up in the Aleutian Islands. That's going to push about waist to chest high surf on west-facing beaches like in the South Bay and Ventura and a few areas in San Diego. So condition-wise, that's what we're looking for, and really keep your eye out the beach for safety as these big swells come in over the next week or so off of these different hurricanes right off of Mexico. I don't know when these Mexican hurricanes are going to end. It's traditional this happens in October, and we're going to at least have a couple, 3 more weeks of this with warm water coming this way before it cools off dramatically. So let's start up in Santa Barbara. You know, the water up there, really all along the California coast, has been very off-colored with kelp and eelgrass, and some areas, of course, trash in there. And it really doesn't matter if you're in Huntington Beach or Santa Barbara or San Diego. It's really been happening in all of those areas. And the anglers who have been successful have been keeping their eye on the areas where it's thick and matted and difficult to fish, and fish not in those areas but in the cleaner areas. And also the anglers who've tried to concentrate on that, you know, like hour after low tide up to high tide period, where a lot of that kelp is on the beach and not in the water. At that high tide, it's all in the water swashing around. It's an absolute mess, and I really don't think the fish really like to feed so much in that. Up in Santa Barbara, perch fishing remains really good up there. Everything else has slowed down pretty much up there. There's still fish biting. It's not as frequent as it was, let's say, 2 weeks ago, but it's still good. When you go down to Carpinteria, to the estuary in Carpinteria, there's been some really good leopard shark fishing down there. And what can be fun down there sometimes is on the smaller ones that are maybe anywhere from, you know, gosh, foot or foot and a half to 2 feet long, they will swim in the waters of that estuary where it comes out into the ocean and kind of inside where the waves break, and you'll see their fins go back and forth as they're feeding out there. So that's been a good area. And one angler there hooked into a 90-pound bat ray. I think the wings on it were like 5 feet on each side. He fought it for an hour and he finally got it to shore. They got a picture of it and let it go. So that was pretty exciting. I know for sure, knowing him, that he thought it was a gigantic corbina and was somewhat disappointed with the fact it was a bat ray, but good for him out of the estuary there. So that was really good. Halibut fishing in general up there has slowed. It's still been good in kind of that Moore Mesa all the way up to El Capitan area. And anglers who have had luck with halibut up in the Santa Barbara area and really all along the coast have often found them adjacent to rock structure. Where sand and rocks meet is often where you'll find them. So if you're up in Santa Barbara and you're looking to fish halibut, look for areas where sand meets rock. A really good way to do that, let's say you go on the mesa, is to go at low tide on the cliff and look out and find out where the rock edge is and the sand meets it, and then line that up with something permanent on shore, the big blue house, and then go back there to higher tide when it's covered and fish that edge. You can do that all up and down the California coast. That's one of the big secrets in halibut fishing for sure. And then last but not least, when we're looking up in Santa Barbara, the striper bite continues at Halama. I've talked about this before. Doesn't surprise me at all. I've had some fantastic middle of October bites up there on striper. And what's really interesting is this month is we'll get these Santa Ana conditions, which will just lay it out beautiful up there in Halama with very little wind or no wind at all, and really quite warm and comfortable, which could be followed 3 days later by rain. So keep your eye out for that weather-wise, but anywhere in that Vandenberg, Halama area, look for stripers to continue there. You might even find them down by Gaviota, but they do like bigger surf, and that's usually where you're going to find them in the bigger surf for sure. And then as we make our way down to Ventura, not a lot of reports out of Ventura. Please send me more reports out of Ventura. But corbina continue to bite down there. Not a lot. I saw 3 or 4 this week. I saw a really big one this week, a 29-incher, one of the bigger ones that I've seen in quite a while, come out of there. And guys are using bloodworms up there. They're looking for sand crabs, not having so much luck on the sand crab, but really those bloodworms, and then also the flies in the surf, the crab imitation flies used in the right place, in particular by anglers sight fishing using polarized glasses to see the corbina and then casting right in front of them, are the ones who are having the best luck there in Ventura. And then as we make our way down to Malibu, the reports coming in from Malibu this week is once again the water's really quite dirty down there, all the way from Topanga all the way up through Malibu to Point Magoo. There's off and on spots where there's quite a bit of kelp and eelgrass in the water. And of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've had that strong southern swell, and much of it gets cut off by PV, and then the amount that gets past it hits about up in Malibu and Malibu North, and that's how it pushes all of that kelpy, dirty water around out there and kind of gets stuck in little areas until a stronger swell either pushes it up the coast or a northwest swell pushes it down. But with all of that said, perch fishing remains good in all of the Malibu area, but in particular, great reports coming out of Leo Carrillo for both barred surf perch and walleye surf perch there. And then good surf perch fishing all along each beach as you go from Leo Carrillo, really El Matador, or Leo Carrillo north all the way to Point Magoo. All of those have had good perch fishing along there. And anglers have been using mussels, clams, and lugworms have seemed to work really, really well for bait up there. Now, one thing I want to remind everybody of is that of all the places I fished in California, I've never found more calico surf perch anywhere than in Malibu, in the Malibu area, especially the Leo Carrillo up to Point Magoo area. And once again, they love those same baits, the mussels, the clams, sidewinder crabs they like, ghost shrimp they like, all of those natural baits, lugworms, bloodworms, all of those. They love those baits, but this is the time they really start biting, and there's some really beautiful ones up there. I've not caught one bigger than 16 inches. I'm sure there's some 18 or 20 inches out there, but quite a few in that 12 to 16 inch category in those calico surf perch out of Malibu. So if you have a report from Malibu, be sure to send it in next week. That'd be great. And then as we make our way down to the South Bay, man, it's like a tale of 2 cities down there. It's crazy. So kind of that Venice Beach, I would say, all the way to El Segundo, continues to kick out perch and yellowfin croaker. There's been a couple of stripers caught along that way, but they were small along the beach there, and those were caught on lucky crafts. Of course, those perch and yellowfin croaker are being caught on sand crabs that guys are digging up on the beach, and then also lugworms, bloodworms, mussel. Those have all worked really well in the area. But the big news in the South Bay is how quiet it's been in Hermosa and Manhattan, and how crazy good it's been down in South Torrance Beach, in the Rat Beach area, Torrance Beach, even along Redondo, maybe all the way up to Sapphire. First of all, that area is like a cove back there. I think we've talked about this before. And as warm water and swells come up from the south in the summer, they end up getting kind of trapped in there, especially trapped by a current that is an eddy circulation that's on the outside of that. It holds that warm water in there. As a result, there's a lot of fish in the South Bay in the fall that migrate over toward that corner over there, not only because the water's warmer, but because there's more food over there. So anglers this last week, the reports are crazy. Barracuda, almost close to legal size barracuda from the beach there. Bonito, multiple halibut, white sea bass, big 60-inch calico bass, big calico bass, smelt, perch, even yellowfin croaker. All these different fish have been biting that area. So keep your eyes open in that area for good fishing there. Fishing's going to be good there in the morning and the evening. And nobody's been fishing there after dark. I bet you anything some of these dudes have been fishing in the spot where they've been catching all those fish there after dark with a lucky craft. They could get a big striper there also. So right down in that part of the South Bay, the very south part of the South Bay, what we would call South Torrance Beach or Rat Beach, has really been phenomenal. It's been good for 3 weeks or so. The reports have been absolutely phenomenal out there. I just can't say that enough. And that will continue for a little while longer till we get a big northwest swell, and then that's going to push that warm water out of there, and nothing will be there overnight. So jump on down there if you're looking for a place in the South Bay to fish, for sure. And then as we make our way down to Orange County, that stretch from Belmont Pier all the way to Seal Beach jetties, kind of that whole zone, continues to kick out a ton of these sublegal halibut. There's just a ton of them in there. And the other thing, there's been quite a few yellowfin croaker in that area, and there's been schools of bonito and striper. And they've been in these small fish, these 1 to 2 pounders, even the striper really small, have been swimming in these schools out there with birds diving on them, and anglers have been picking them up both from the pier at Belmont and then all the way down the beach into Seal Beach onto the jetty there, these smaller fish. So hopefully they'll grow up and be bigger fish. There's not a lot of action in that area on big fish or legal fish, for example, but it is perking up, and that's really a good sign to see, especially when we have a big variety of fish there. And of course, it's been really exciting about these bonito being all up and down the coast now, and hopefully that'll even get better as we get into December, which is a lot of times really their month that they love for sure. And then when we go to the Huntington Beach to, let's say, Newport Beach zone, not a lot of reports out of that area. There's been good perch fishing down there. There's been a few yellowfin croaker. I didn't get any reports this week of spotfin croaker down there. That really surprises me. We should be seeing those here pretty soon, so certainly keep your eye on that. But the big news in Orange County is, once again, down in that Trussell's area, that Trussell's to San Onofre area, we had our angler who's been down there 3 weeks in a row now. We've talked about him every single week. This week, again, using a lucky craft with a light colored bottom, fishing those areas where there's rock structure adjacent to sand. So once again, he goes down there at low tide. He figures out where those edges are, waits till it fills in, and fishes those edges. Once again, picked off an over 30-inch halibut right from the beach again. So that Trussell's San Onofre area has been good all year long. Remember San Onofre? We talked about how many spotfin croaker were caught down there earlier this year, and now we've got this incredibly good halibut by up near that Trussell's zone. So that continues to be good, and I keep my eye on that for sure. And then when we make it down to San Diego, once again along the coast of San Diego, there's been all kinds of kelp and eelgrass and water. It's just been a mess down there, and you've had to find spots in between areas of kelp in order to fish, and that's been the best fishing. I do tell folks, like if you go down there and you're at Carlsbad, for example, somewhere where you're up on a cliff, Encinitas, Carlsbad, any of those areas, look over the water before you walk down to the water and try to find clear areas that are down there, and then walk to those areas. fish those areas there for sure. When we make our way down to Crystal Pier, there's still sand crabs under Crystal Pier. They're not as effective, of course, as they would be during the summer when there's lots of eggs in them. They have lots of egg odor on them. Now there's very few eggs on them. So they don't work quite as well, but they're still working there. But for anglers down in that Mission Beach, Pacific Beach area who've fought to fish in between those areas of kelp, who are using bloodworms, continue to pick up some nice spotfin croaker, anywhere from about 18 to 24 inches down there. And I know there's some even bigger ones down there for sure. So that remains okay. And then lastly in San Diego is this Mission Bay bite we've got on spotted bay bass and on stripers. Those Kitech 3-inch white or light gray or pearl colored baits have worked really, really well inside the harbor there. Any areas, once again, where you're finding that rock structure adjacent to sand, or those pylons that come down from the bridges that go over the bay, all of those have been holding spotted bay bass. And in the evening, there's been a lot of those small, those 12 to maybe 18-inch stripers in there too. And I didn't get a report this week on the corvina, but I wouldn't be surprised if those are there at night also, along with down in San Diego Harbor. So remember, fishthesurf.com, it's up and running. Check out those articles, they're so awesome. This weekend on YouTube, I'm going to put on more videos. I'm going to put on a video this weekend about moon phases in surf fishing, finding fish at the beach. All kinds of new videos are going to come up on there too. So you've got all these great articles to look at with pictures, which makes it easier to read. And then you've got a video where you can just kick back and watch the video and learn about surf fishing there too. And gosh, what else do I have to add? That's really about it for now. If you need any surf fishing gear, whether it's rod and reels or terminal tackle or worms for bait or gulp or whatever you need, check out surffishtackle.com. And until next week when I see you right here, thank you so much for watching and good luck on the beach.